What's happening? Thank you for tapping into the 24th floor. We got a great show on tap reacting to the first round of the NBA draft. The Grizzlies made a big move, and we'll bring in the one and only DeMichael Cole to grace us with his insight as the Grizzlies beat writer. Plus, we hear from Grizzlies GM Zach Kleiman for the first time since he traded away star Desmond Bane. Lots to get into today. No time like the present. Let's rock. The 24th floor starts right now. Joining the show today, it's the one and only DeMichael Cole, Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, all-around ball knower, as we say, also known as Mr. Worldwide. Just got back from Mexico.
Yeah.
Boy, got a little tan on him, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know me a little bit more light-skinned than this, brother. You looking like me.
A little tan, but we had fun. I had to get away right before the draft because, as we're about to talk about now, when it turns the calendar to late June and early July, things get really busy, and that's the busiest part of the off season. Right?
Yeah, it certainly looked like you had fun. I think we had some photos. Can y'all bring that up for me real quick? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, looking like Tarzan.
Just doing some things we never did
before.
A little
canopy jumping. You look good. Just talk to me about Mexico, man. Before we get into it.
Man, it was smooth. I'm really adventurous. I'm into this. I need to start doing more things that I haven't done yet. So that was on the zip line, and the guy was trying to persuade us to go upside down, and I'm like, I don't know about this, but I was like, you know what? When the next time I'm gonna do this? So I said, I'll do it. Then the guy took out his camera. I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? And the picture turned out good.
Yeah,
turned out smooth.
I went to Costa Rica. We also did some zip lining. I was not as brave as you to go upside down, but it is what it is. Let's jump into our big idea for today. Talk about these Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies pick up Cedric Coward out of Washington State in the first round of the draft Wednesday night. Grizzlies traded with the Portland Trail Blazers to get it done. Blazers picked Coward at number 11, traded him to the Grizzlies, and in return, the Grizzlies drafted Chinese center Yang Hansen for the Blazers at pick 16, and will also send a 2028 first-round pick and 2 second-round picks to the Blazers. He's got a phenomenal game, especially on the defensive end, and a sweet shooting stroke. As for his mentality, he says he fits perfectly with the Grizzlies.
They get after it every night, and I think I fit with that mold perfectly. We get after it every night. We don't take days off. We don't take time off. And like you said, like John said, actually, he's fine in the West and going with that mentality in terms of we're the best out there, we're the best team out there, and nobody can mess with us, and we're going to come after you and try to take your heads off.
There's nothing he couldn't theoretically be able to contribute to in the NBA in a real role while taking nothing off the table. We don't see some area that would be a glaring weakness that couldn't be improved. I think there's a foundation of what could be a very interesting, versatile, multi-positional defender who could end up playing different types of roles offensively.
All right, DeMichael, the Grizzlies move up to get Cedric Coward. You heard what he had to say. He's fine. He's already saying fine in the West.
Yeah, he's calling shots already.
He might be a couple of years behind in terms of what the mentality of the Grizz might be. What is your evaluation of what the Grizzlies did in the first round?
This was the type of pick they needed to make if they were going to keep the pick. I know there was a lot of conversation about the idea that are the Grizzlies going to keep this pick? Are they going to trade it for a veteran player that fits closer to the timeline of Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr., whatever the case may be. But in this case, when you evaluated this draft class, you say if the Grizzlies keep this pick, they need a versatile wing who can particularly change the game on the defensive end. You look at what the Grizzlies have. You got Ja Morant. You got Jalen Wells, who we heard Zach Kleiman basically say that a key part in the Desmond Bane trade was the fact that Jalen Wells is someone that they're starting to really trust. So he's kind of positioned himself as part of the future as well. Then you got Jaren Jackson Jr., you got Zach Edey. You got one spot right in between those four positions. That's where you need that big wing who can play on both ends. Cedric Coward, if you look at his stats, you look at the highlight tapes, you look at what we've seen, over the course of his collegiate career. Yeah, he played at Eastern Washington, then he played a couple games at Washington State. So that's kind of the question mark here. But the most impressive thing about this guy is the measurables that go with those counting numbers. You look at the highlights there, you're looking at a guy he has a 7'2.5" wingspan. That's only 3 inches shorter than Jaren Jackson Jr. So he has this long, massive wingspan that puts him in the, from a measurable standpoint, the conversation with guys like Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and those are the type of players that the Grizzlies have been trying to covet, but they haven't been able to get. So it's like, okay, we can't get one of the guys who are already in the league. Let's go try to find our own. And that's what they're hoping Cedric Coward can be.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about unicorns in the league, and normally you think of that as like the 7'1" guy. Jaren Jackson Jr., we call it unicorn. Kristaps Porzingis was called a unicorn when he came out and initially went to the Knicks. I think what we're starting to see is that these wings are the unicorns in the league now. These guys who are long, lanky, rangy, can shoot, and especially in Cedric's case, can play really good defense. They're looking for their own version of first of all, they're kind of trying to get a replica of Jalen Wells, for one, right? In some certain aspects. They want a Jalen Williams. They want a Jaden McDaniels from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it seems like they feel pretty good about Cedric in saying that, he could potentially rise to the occasion and be kind of that level of player. And it was kind of interesting as you were listening to Zach Kleiman, he was very careful to not put the world on Cedric's shoulders right now. He was kind of playing both sides of the fence. I mean, he could turn into this, but we can't say that.
That's how you got to do it.
But you're not moving up 5 picks, giving up a future first rounder if you don't think that this guy could really be in your rotation moving forward.
Man, they got to think a lot of him, right? You gave up a future first in addition to the number 16 pick and 2 future second round picks as well. But again, when you talk about just the fact that I know a lot of people are going to talk about the idea that they should have traded the pick for a more veteran player. What's the next best thing to do if you can't go out and get that veteran player? You say, okay, let's get a guy in this draft who kind of has some of those same, measurables, has some of the same skills that those guys have. And if you look at, what Cedric Coward has done in his college career, he mimics, some of those things from a skill set standpoint. But then when we talked to him, on the conference call on yesterday, the thing that stood out to me is he kept talking about the defensive mentality. We didn't have to bring up the grit and grind for him to say the word grit on the conference call. So he already gets it.
He's up here. His head's up here. He already understands what he's got going on.
Yeah, and that is going to be big because you talk about a guy who's going to come in now. He already has the idea that I'm going to do the dirty work. We got Ja Morant, we got Jaren Jackson Jr. They're not going to ask me to score 20 a game, as a rookie and put the ball in my hands and say, hey, go, do whatever you want. They're going to say, hey, you're going to have more of a controlled role, but on the defensive end, change the game. And now, in a way, you get Jalen Wells some help. And it's funny that Jalen Wells is getting help because he would have had the help if he would have stayed another year at Washington State, being that both of these dudes went to Washington State just a year apart.
Yeah, so, for those who are unfamiliar with Cedric Coward's story, started Division III, went to Willamette University, I believe, only played a year there, then went to Division II at Eastern Washington, and then went to Washington State, only got to play six games at Washington State before he hurt himself with a shoulder injury, and he says he is fully healthy. What's interesting, I think, about his journey to the Grizzlies, too, is that he had his workout with the Grizzlies on Monday, and part of that is because Grizzlies didn't have a first-round pick before a couple of weeks ago. He talked about what that workout looked like and why he felt like the Grizzlies would be attractive to him on both sides because of the workout he had. Take a listen.
We got after it. It was very competitive. We did a series of drills, just showcasing my skills, my talents, and then especially my grit and my, just being able to stay the course and be competitive no matter if I was making shots, missing shots. And honestly, like I said before, not only talking to the guys in the front office, but on the court with the guys, it just felt natural. It felt like people who wanted to get better, felt like people who were pushing me to get better. And there was a little ish talking in there, so that always helps to keep the fun aspect.
So, DeMichael, in that he mentions kind of like what you were saying. There's some grit in there. There's some grind in there. There's a little ish talking in there. But I think the biggest thing that stands out is like to him, and he says it out of his own mouth, is like it felt natural. It felt right. What do you think about the fit that he kind of has when you do have to go through some of these workouts and you're trying to figure out if you do belong in an organization?
As a player, you're looking for an organization that, one, believes in you, that has that confidence that you could be the player that you feel like you could be. And when you listen to him talk about his strengths as a player, it almost feels like exactly what the Grizzlies have said to us since the season ended on what they're trying to do. You listen to Zach Kleiman, the words that he kept saying, in different ways, was just how the Grizzlies are trying to retool this roster around Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant. It's not necessarily a rebuild or anything like that. It's like, no, we're looking at this and we're being honest with the assessment. With Ja Morant and Desmond Bane in the backcourt, there was a limit defensively. Like, that's just the reality of it. There was a limit. So guess what? Now you got Jalen Wells, who, has a lot of potential on the defensive end. You put Cedric Coward out there. Now you got another guy who's a lot of potential on the defensive end to go with Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, and now you put all these guys with good defensive measurables around Ja Morant. And now you're in a situation where it feels like, to the Grizzlies' standpoint, that this is closer to what a championship identity for this organization will look like than what they previously had.
Yeah, and we still haven't talked about Vince Williams. We still haven't talked about G.G. Jackson, who could emerge defensively, but is an offensive weapon. Grizzlies still have 2 picks tonight in the second round. You mentioned the Desmond Bane trade. We're going to get into that here in just a moment. We talked about the bold move the Grizzlies made. They trade Desmond Bane to land a first-round pick. We're going to hear from GM Zach Kleiman again and break down what it all means. That's next on the other side of the break.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24 Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24 Plus. The 24 Plus TV app. Streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24 Plus, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain.
Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. The storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
How big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24 Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24 Plus. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene, faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24 Plus. Download free on your TV now.
Welcome back. The Grizzlies made their first-round pick last night, Cedric Coward out of Washington State, but just a couple of weeks ago, they didn't even have a first-round pick to use. That was until they traded Desmond Bane. As a reminder, the Grizzlies gave up Bane in order to get Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Cole Anthony. They got back pick 16 in this year's draft, which became pick 11, and they got first-round picks in 2026, 28, and 30, a first-round pick swap in 2029. They traded the 2028 first-round pick to the Blazers in order to get Coward. Bane spent the last 6 years in Memphis, was the 30th overall pick by the Grizzlies back in 2020. One of the best three-point shooters in the league. The Grizzlies will miss his shooting, if nothing else. But Zach Kleiman felt like now was the right time to make some major moves after the Grizzlies had bumped their heads against the ceiling one too many times.
Not a decision that we came to lightly. We really wanted to take a step back, not overreact to the end of the season, and digest where are we. The goal is the goal, which is to win a championship here in Memphis. And we reached the point where we felt like, you don't just go out and make that trade, but if there were opportunities, to build around John Jaren, with a different type of build.
So, Michael, you got into it a little bit right before we went to break, but what do you think about what Kleiman says here about using your clear pillars in Ja and Jaren and trying to build around that as a potential championship winning roster?
Yeah, it's a moment where you look in the mirror and you have an honest assessment, as we said, and I agree with the idea that, look, you kind of reached the ceiling with the Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. trio. Now, some people say, injuries played a factor and all these other things. Sure. But at the end of the day, it was a large enough sample size where we're talking about 5 seasons together, and you got 1 playoff series win to show for it. And then Kleiman talked about the idea of basically this being a copycat league, right? Mm-hmm. The last 2 champions are really good examples of teams who had minimal defensive weaknesses in their starting lineups. With the Boston Celtics, you had Derek White and, all those guys, but Derek White and Drew Holiday as the guards are really setting the tone defensively. With the Oklahoma City Thunder, no weaknesses that you can just
Not
look at one guy in the
not
starting
one
lineup and
weakness
say,
on that
that's
roster.
who we're going to go at. So the Grizzlies, in a way, say, okay, we got Ja and Jaren as our foundational pieces. Let's focus a little bit more on getting those type of players, the guys who are going to be really standout defensive players. And that's kind of the refocus, the reshift from an identity standpoint. So it makes sense to me. You know, at the end of the day, he did say, you know, it was tough, you know, letting go of Desmond Bane. But I like the idea of kind of, you know, you're restarting a little bit where you're not necessarily rebuilding and like, you know, starting all the way from ground zero, but you're kind of going to work your way back up and see what this new look Grizzlies team will look like.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't feel like they are going to. You call it a rebuild if you trade Jaren and or Ja.
Yeah.
They've made it very clear that they don't plan to do either one of those things, right? You do bring in a Contavious Caldwell-Pope who has championship level experience. You bring in a Cole Anthony who is a very good bench piece, probably could start on a lot of teams, won't start on this team, obviously, and they still may move him, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that they will move Cole Anthony in order to bring somebody else in? Because I asked that question mostly because they used the 2028 first-round pick to get Cedric Coward, so you lose a piece of that, you know, draft capital that might be attractive to another team. Do you foresee them still using Cole, or is he going to be on the team in fall?
It's tough to say. I lean more towards the idea that he won't be on the team. We don't know when that'll happen, but I'm just looking at the roster makeup right now, and you look at this Grizzlies roster, and you say, okay, Cole Anthony, smaller guard, scoring guard, has the ability to pass the basketball. That's what you can say about Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yeah.
And you have him as someone who's already been in the organization, very defensive-minded. And Scottie Pippen Jr. was one of the Grizzlies players who actually played really well in that playoff series. So he's coming off of that good performance to build up on. And there's some kind of overlap there with the idea of Cole Anthony, Scottie Pippen Jr. I don't see both of those guys being in a rotation. So it's a situation where the Grizzlies will have to figure that out. It is a sizable contract to a certain degree, talking about a little bit around, you know, over $13 million. So you got to find a team that's going to take that. You're probably going to have to, you know, send out, like you said, some of the draft capital assets, depending on what type of team wants that contract. But they're in a good enough situation because of that draft capital that you just mentioned. Even after trading that 2028 Orlando Magic first-round pick, the Grizzlies own all of their own first-round picks going forward, plus they have that draft capital. And that 2026 pick that they got from the Orlando Magic, that is going to be one of the best draft assets going into the rest of this offseason and going into free agency next year, however you want to look at it. That pick right now potentially could be a top 10 pick next year.
Yeah, and certainly is one that they are thinking hard about using for themselves. But I think what Kleiman noted even before the draft, we talked about the end of the season, he's like, we got unintentionally younger. It seems like with the Cedric Coward pick, you're intentionally getting younger with the you know, idea of that particular player having high upside, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like they're not necessarily wanting to move more in that direction. And really, he kind of doubled down on that idea last night when he says, hey, we're not necessarily one player away from being a championship contender even yesterday, which tells me, okay, you're trying to get to that status, but you don't even think you're necessarily going to be there next year.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you're taking a mulligan kind of year. He's not going to say that
Right.
But when you draft Coward, you're not necessarily expecting him to be the contributor in next season.
Yeah, it's a different look. It's a different way that the Grizzlies have vocally communicated their expectations since I've been here, since the 2021-22 season, when in those years you talk about back-to-back seasons where you won over 50 games, number 2 seeds in the playoffs, and then you have some early exits in the playoffs or whatever the case may be. But even after those seasons, even after last season when all the injuries happened, championship expectations were still here. It was still like, oh, we make one move here, we make one move there. Boom, we're right there with the best of the best in the West. And even during this season, this past season, you go to January, the Grizzlies are the number 2 seed.
They're right there, yeah.
They're right there behind OKC. Everyone was looking forward to that early February game where it was going to be OKC versus the Grizzlies, potentially a number 1 versus number 2 matchup.
And they got waxed.
And yeah, they got beat down, and everything went downhill pretty much from there. But it's a different realization to the fact that, hey, look, we are not who we thought we were. And this is the first time I've heard them say that, and Zach Kleiman has said it multiple times to the point that, yeah, it is kind of like, all right, let's take a step back here. We ain't fine in the West. You know, we might need to duck a little bit of smoke.
Even though Cedric Coward clearly believes they're fine at the West.
Cedric Coward, he's coming with that mentality.
Which, as a rookie, you kind of need,
I
right?
like it.
I do like it. I do like it. On another note, Kleiman said they didn't do an expanded coaching search before hiring Tomas Isalo full time. Do you think that was the right move? And he did answer a direct question when he said that, so he kind of couldn't duck that particular smoke. But interesting that he would admit, like, no, we did not make a coaching search. And I guess a lot of times they announce when they do that kind of thing.
In this situation, it was unique. I mean, he had 9 games to take over. And, you know, Isalo was one of the main people who pointed that out. Like, you know, he didn't get a lot of practice time and things like that. But he was able to impress the Grizzlies. So to me, it felt like he was really interviewing for this job long before he actually became the acting interim coach or whatever the case may be. But, I'm always in favor of you just got to go through the process, right? Like, even if he is your guy, he's probably going to be our guy. Let's bring in some other candidates. Let's show him our roster and let's say, what are you going to do with this? You got John Morant here, you got Desmond Bain, you got Jaren Jackson Jr. Show me how you can get this roster to the Western Conference Finals. Show me how you can make this a championship roster. Let's see what they say. Get the different inputs, intel from different coaches, and see what you can do with that information. But so that would be my approach to it. Even if he's your guy, bring in a couple experienced guys. You know, you got guys like Mike Brown out there, Mike Budenholzer, Frank Vogel. These are championship coaches, you know, so to speak. So I would have just done the homework, the due diligence. Yeah. But even if he was, you know, your guy, and that happens in business a lot. Like, sometimes you know who's going to be your person, but you still want to go through the process. And I feel like they should have done that. But at the same time, we're going to see if this was the right decision. And it won't take long with Isalo taking over here relatively shortly.
Big year coming up for the Memphis Grizzlies. The next thing that we have to look forward to now is we'll actually hear. Well, we got 2 picks tonight, second round. We'll hear from all the rookies on Friday is the expectation. But after that, we're talking about the Summer League. So if you want to keep up with the Memphis Grizzlies and know what they got going on, follow DeMichael Cole and his writing over at the Commercial Appeal. Keep up with him at DeMichael C on social media. We got to let him go because, you know, he's got a lot of writing he's got to do for the next couple of days. But coming up, the best of track and field in Tennessee resides right here in Memphis. We introduce you to the Gatorade Player of the Year right out of Central High School. That's next.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24 Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24 Plus. The 24 Plus TV app, streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24 Plus, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain.
Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
It's how big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24 Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24 Plus. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24 Plus. Download free on your TV now.
Morant and Kool-Aid announced a collaboration on his Ja 2s, the Ja 2 Kool-Aid colorway, also known as the Mixed Berries colorway. Morant gifted pairs of that colorway to the Jet Academy at the Nike EYBL AAU tournament at the Memphis Sports and Events Center this weekend. But they are not the only ones. Drew Hill was also gifted a pair of Ja 2 Mixed Berries.
This is by far the best promotional item that has ever been sent.
Go ahead and bring them out. Let's bring them out. Let's see what we.
So first of all, in the top, we got to appreciate the oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I also want to say to Kool-Aid, by the way, I hadn't drank Kool-Aid in like 15 years. After these showed up, I went. They put some packets in here.
Packs? Yeah,
I went and made Kool-Aid, and it was just as delicious as it was when I was younger.
You obviously are a Melrose alum yourself. What would you say about the talent from the track side of things that can come out of Memphis? We talk so much about the basketball talent that comes out of this town, but from a track perspective, what do you see as you do this year after year?
Actually, we have 2 gold medalists out of Melrose. My teammate Sheila Eccles was the one that gave Flojo the baton in 1988. We were teammates at Melrose. And then Kennedy McKinley is a boxer. So to be able to have 3 Olympic gold medalists, we all walked the halls at the same time, along with a now NBA champion and a couple of...
Welcome back to the 24th floor. Let's shift to some local high school sports. The Central High Warriors have another reason to celebrate. Track star Miles Neesmith just earned this year's Tennessee Gatorade Boys Track and Field Player of the Year award. The honor recognizes the top high school athletes in the country. Neesmith wrapped up his 2025 season at the state championships in Murfreesboro, where he broke the state record in the triple jump. And he didn't stop there. He went on to win a national title in the long jump at Nike Outdoor Nationals. Congrats to Mr. Neesmith. The Memphis Grizzlies are not just getting it done on the court and on the draft boards, they're also getting it done in the community as well. Tuesday, they unveiled the new Grizzden Recreation Room for Streets Ministries. The Grizzlies spent the last 2 months renovating the room at Streets Ministry space on Vance Avenue. The ribbon cutting featuring Grizzlies Hall of Famer Tony Allen, current Grizzly Jay Huff, and even Grizz himself. The team put in new carpets, a new paint job, game systems, arcades, and even a music room for the kids to make a little beat or two. The team in Streets Ministry say it's all about providing a safe space for kids to be in the Memphis community.
Letting these kids know that they have a safe place to come to. And not only that, you keep the kids coming in here, keeping them out of trouble. It's always a good thing, man. I love the fact that, you know, we as the Grizzly organization is part of something in the community.
There are still a ton of reactions pouring in about the Grizzlies pick Cedric Coward last night, including from our friends at Locked On, who DeMichael Cole is also a host of Locked On Grizz, if you didn't know. His co-host Joe Mullinax gives his 2 cents on the Washington State wing.
The Grizzlies were never throwing in the towel, tanking, trading John Morant. It's a retool moving on from Desmond Bane and that bigger contract. And there were 2 guys that I was most interested in terms of trading up, Colin Murray-Boyles and Cedric Coward. Murray-Boyles obviously goes to the Raptors at 9. That meant that it was likely that the Spurs or the Thunder were going to take this guy, and the Grizzlies beat him to the punch, and I'm more than happy that they did so. He checks so many boxes for this Grizzlies team. A 6'6" tall, 7'2".
Well, in this block, on a sad note, former University of Memphis women's basketball coach Joy Lee McNellis has passed away. Her alma mater, Southern Miss, announced her death on Facebook this week. Lee McNellis was the 2nd winningest coach in Memphis program history, leading the Tigers to 6 conference championships from 1991 to 2004. She earned many accolades throughout her coaching career and retired after the 24-25 season at Southern Miss. Lee McNellis will be inducted posthumously into the Memphis Sports Hall of Fame as part of the class of 2025. We'll be right back.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24 Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24 Plus. The 24 Plus TV app. Streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24 Plus, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain.
Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
That's how big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24 Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24 Plus. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24+. Download free on your TV now.
Best thing I saw this week comes from the NBA draft. Danny Wolf out of Michigan was selected 27th overall by the Brooklyn Nets. A lot of emotion from the Wolf family, including his brother, who was bawling his eyes out for his bro. People were making fun of this guy and calling the moment a generational meme, but let me just say this. Until it is your brother or sister or parent or kid or best friend or spouse who does something incredible that they've worked incredibly hard for, you're not going to get this level of emotion. You don't understand it. Most of y'all ain't achieved more than picking your nose first thing in the morning. And I remember how emotional it was watching my own brother get a scholarship to play college football or my stepbrother being drafted to the major leagues. These moments take so much sacrifice. So when it happens, any emotion you decide you want to display is the right amount. And that is my soapbox for today. I will get off it. That's the show for today. Thanks to DeMichael Cole for pulling up. Shout out to Richard Denson and Sydney Jones on the ones and twos making this thing go. We're back on Monday. Until then, see you later.
Continue with us and watch free now on the 24+ app everywhere you stream.